So much talk about the structure of the building and the integrity of each building, not only at the Champlain Towers, but also all the buildings around it. Let's check in now with our Andrew Perez, who's been looking into that, the sister building of the Champlain Towers. Andrew.
And you know, Calvin, Nicole, there are so many moving parts to this tragedy here. On the one hand, there's that search and rescue. That is the primary focus right now. And it's also incredibly hot outside, so you can just imagine what those first responders, those crews are dealing with. While all that's going on, the investigation has already begun into why the building itself collapsed the way that it did. And then on top of that, crews are also having to start a separate investigation into other buildings, specifically in this area, and also the broader implications of buildings in general. I want to step out of the way, though. You take a look right there down the street, just beyond that second perimeter. That is the remaining standing structure of the building that collapsed, Champlain Towers. Here's the thing, though. Champlain Towers also has a sister building, a twin sister building, actually, just north of it. It's Champlain Tower North. Same design, same structure. There are even different versions of that same building that have been built out here over the years as well, just off the beach. Local leaders saying, frankly, they can't know for sure if it's safe. They were very point blank about that this morning. The mayor of Surfside saying, I can't tell you that it's safe to stay in those specific buildings. So right now they're considering evacuating everybody from those buildings so they can really take a more in-depth look at what's going on structurally.
This doesn't happen in the United States. Buildings don't collapse.
And now, as rescue efforts continue, nearby residents say they're concerned as well. Robert Listman lives in Champlain Tower East, a sister building to the one that collapsed on Thursday. He noticed damage to his structure, and that's raising some red flags.
What I would really like to see is all these structural engineers that are here just to take a step down to our building and just to look. It's not that far. The concern is that there was a big shake. There was a disruption that just occurred. I mean, a building went down.
It was built at the same time with the same designer.
Governor Ron DeSantis in town speaking about that very issue as well. The tragedy in Surfside bringing up a whole host of problems with buildings, stability, and code enforcement rules. As we work to determine why this building collapsed, conversations are being had to change up code, and for now, possibly evacuate other buildings like Listman's.
They are looking at working with them, and I know they are considering potentially evacuating them, but that's something that ultimately the mayor's going to have to make the call on. I don't know that there's indications that there's any problems with that building, but just given the similarities, given the same age, they think that may be something. So I think he may have an announcement on that today.
So the most immediate concern right now, again, is for Champlain Tower North. That's the twin sister building to the Champlain Tower that actually collapsed. Residents specifically in the North Tower, they may be evacuated just out of an abundance of caution. We know that crews have been around to inspect the building, but authorities are saying they need to really get in there. They need to do something much more thorough with a wide variety of engineers that can look at the bones of that building. For a more in-depth inspection. One thing is for sure here, that just like Hurricane Andrew, just like major tragedies and events of the past, this is certainly going to change the landscape of construction and building and the way things are done here in South Florida. That's the latest here in Surfside. I'm Andrew Perez. I'll send it back to you.
And Andrew, this is something that we certainly talked with Christina about, and that is the issue that so many people are feeling this fear as a result of what happened at the Champlain Towers, and it's a very understandable fear as well. The fact that their building may end up like the Champlain Towers, but you have some engineers who are saying what happened there is really sort of an outlier.
And the other thing that we have to take into consideration as well is the emotional toll that this took on those residents as well. They heard what happened. They felt the shaking as that building was coming down. They saw the rubble, the people screaming, as we've been reporting over the last couple of days. They saw all of that firsthand. You can imagine how terrifying it is to then go a couple of feet over to your building, see some damage to your walls, to your foundation. Even the governor was saying we don't necessarily know that anything's wrong with Champlain Tower North, but it is something that we need to keep in mind because the design is the same, because the architecture is the same. So that's something they definitely want to take into account, and you can certainly understand why residents are concerned.
And I'm sure they're also hearing the complaints, because we've also heard that too from some of the residents. We've heard them say to some of our reporters, the cracks, the shaking, I read an account where a couple said that they had smelled tar from the roof work being done. So all of that is going to come into play when they're doing this investigation, which is going to take a really long time, Andrew.
Yeah, and that investigation, keep in mind, Nicole, that's a totally different investigation. Why the building that collapsed came down and how it came down the way that it did. If you take a look, this is a very large scene. There's so many blocks and streets just blocked off, to make room for all the crews, all the different types of engineers, all the rescue crews as well out here, but it's also so that they have enough space to work, that they can look at the area, at the ground, and the bones of these actual buildings. We do know that the building inspector here in Surfside said that, as we all know, there was some work being done to the roof of the Champlain Tower that actually collapsed. And there was talk that maybe there were materials that were left there on the roof, but he's saying even with that, there was nothing unusual. There was no unusual amount of material on that roof to cause this catastrophic collapse that we saw.
And Andrew, actually, when your camera panned down a little bit for us, can you give us a perspective of where you are? So that's the sister building to where the tower collapsed, where you are, and can you give us an update on road closures? Because I know, it's not the big story here, but it is part of the story because there are other people around the area. And I know that officials had closed off more streets to allow for heavier equipment. So can you give us a view of that?
Absolutely, and I should just let our viewers know right off the bat that this has been a very fluid situation. I mean, we were much closer to this building just yesterday, even closer than that the day before. So as more crews have come in, the landscape out here in terms of road closures has kind of changed. Right now, we're at Collins Avenue and Surfside 91st Street. That's the intersection down here. They're just keeping this closed, only allowing people to walk to their respective buildings in this area.